Dry Creek, New Mexico Territory, 1883. A bone-dry wind scrapes over splintered rooftops and rattles through broken window panes. Above the town, a lone vulture circles in widening loops, waiting for something to die. Horses kick dust in empty hitching rails, and the church bell hasn't rung in weeks. The well is nearly dry. So is the hope. Sheriff Silas Reed, 38, stands at the edge of Main Street, squinting into the horizon. A Civil War veteran with a jaw like carved stone and eyes that have seen too much. He carries his coat like a tool, not a threat. Folks say he was once a preacher, before the war changed him. Now he's law, such as it still matters. Word spread fast. The Blackstone Gang, 10 ruthless outlaws with scores to settle, are coming, vengeful, organized, and without mercy. And they've promised to raise Dry Creek by sundown. Inside the saloon, Silas pins a single sheet of paper to the bullet-pocked door. I won't run. If you want to live, leave now. Sheriff Reed. By midday, the town is empty. Curtains flap in deserted windows. Chickens wander freely. And Silas waits alone, his hand steady on his holster. 10 riders tear across the high desert, their silhouettes jagged against the sun-baked horizon. Dust coils behind them like a funeral shroud. These aren't common drifters. They ride with grim purpose, each man carved from violence and stitched together with revenge. At the front rides Clay Blackstone, former Pinkerton detective turned outlaw tactician. Eyes like glacier glass, mind sharper than a Schofield revolver. He plans like a general and kills like a surgeon. To his left, preacher Boone-mouthed scripture between clenched teeth, quoting verses as if bullets were blessed. His Bible is hollowed out to hide a derringer. Then come the Rafferty brothers, Jeb, Levi, and Amos, 3 hotheads born into gunfighting and bad whiskey, quick on the draw, but slow between ears. Silvertip Joe, perched high in the saddle, strokes his custom long-barrel rifle like a lover. He's deadly at 100 yards, and he's never answered a question without a riddle. Trailing them, a dynamite-lugging lunatic they call Boom Boom, a mute knife man known only as Stitch, Sergeant Maddox, ex-cavalry with blood on his saber, and Little Roy, a teen killer who grins before he shoots. They ride not for gold, but revenge. Blackstone spits. By nightfall, it won't even be on the map. There was a time Silas Reed almost left Dry Creek. In a quiet flashback, he's seen digging 2 shallow graves beneath a twisted cottonwood, his wife Clara and their son James, both taken by cholera, while he rode a prisoner transport 2 towns away. No time for goodbyes. Just a folded quilt, a child's wooden horse, and the smell of lime. He sat on his porch that night with a whiskey bottle and a packed saddlebag, but he never saddled the horse. The badge felt heavier than grief, and somehow more sacred. Justice isn't passed like a plate, he mutters now, staring at the hollow town. You carry it. He walks the schoolhouse steps, running fingers across the dust-covered desks. One bears his son's initials, carved small in the wood. He exhales through clenched teeth. In the telegraph office, he scrawls a note and slides it across the counter. To the governor, tell my story if I don't make it. S. Reed, Sheriff. Then comes a ritual, loading each shell by hand, sharpening knives to a whisper's edge. He rigs tripwires and buries powder kegs. Last stop, the church. He kneels, sets his tin star on the altar, and whispers, "Forgive what's coming." The Blackstone Gang rides into Dry Creek expecting gunfire, screams, some hint of resistance, but they find only silence. Shutters bang in the wind. A dog limps across Main Street, ribs showing. The town feels abandoned, until the first shot cracks like thunder. From a roof of the sheriff's office, Silas drops Amos Rafferty clean off his saddle. The outlaw hits the dirt, dead before he slumps. Chaos erupts. Horses rear. The gang dives for cover, yelling and firing blindly at windows and rooftops. Then the traps begin. An alley explodes as Stitch, the mute knife man, trips a wire. The blast sends him cartwheeling through the air in a hail of brick and blood. Screams echo off adobe walls. They're being hunted by a ghost. Silvertip Joe, crouched behind a wagon, spots movement in the belfry. He draws a bead, fires. Silas takes a hit to the shoulder, stumbles back, gritting his teeth. But Joe's too focused. He steps toward the water tower, right onto a hidden trigger. The supports collapse, and a heavy platform crushes him beneath wet timbers. The sun sinks lower, bathing the town in dying gold. 3 outlaws lie dead in the dust. 7 remain, and Sheriff Silas Reed hasn't left his post. Smoke curls through the shattered windows of the general store, where Silas is holed up, stacking crates and barrels into makeshift barricades. His coat is soaked in blood from his shoulder wound, but his hand stays steady as he lines up his rifles. The Rafferty brothers, Jeb and Levi, come charging down Main Street, guns blazing and shouting curses. Silas waits. At the last second, he lights a fuse and ducks. A powder keg explodes in front of the store, swallowing the brothers in flame and splinters. One is torn apart. The other stumbles, burning, before Silas puts him down with a single mercy shot. But victory has its price. A bullet tears through Silas's thigh. Gritting his teeth, he pulls himself out a broken window, blood painting his trail behind him. He limps into the church, hoping for cover. But, preacher, Boone is already there. Boone stands at the pulpit, delivering a twisted sermon. God saw Sodom. He burned it. I'm his hand today. He cocks his revolver, stepping forward. But Silas, hidden beneath the pulpit, fires upward, the bullet tearing through Boone's heart. The preacher collapses mid-blessing. 6 down. 4 remain. From the hotel balcony, Blackstone watches, nodding once. Hell of a lawman. Silas crashes through the door of the livery stable, barely conscious. Blood seeps through his trouser leg, his vision swimming. He crawls past overturned saddles and broken tools, finally collapsing in hay. The world blurs. A flickering montage rises in his mind. Clara's laugh in the kitchen light. James running through a field, holding a carved wooden train. The day he pinned the star to his chest for the first time, clean-shaven, full of hope. Now he's alone in a hollow town full of ghosts. Through the haze, he sees them, the townsfolk who fled, watching him from dusty windows in shame, too afraid to stand beside him. Then a whisper of footsteps. A shadow. Etta, the schoolteacher, kneels beside him, pressing cloth to the wound. You're bleeding out. You stayed? She nods. Couldn't leave you to die alone. As she threads a needle with shaking hands, she murmurs, You don't owe them, Silas. He winces. No, but I owe me. Later, he rises, barely standing. He loads his last 6 bullets, hands trembling but resolved. Still 4 of them left, he mutters. Bleeding, limping, half dead, Silas sets out again. The war isn't over yet. Night falls over Dry Creek like a funeral shroud. Lanterns flicker behind shattered windows. Smoke still rises from the general store. The air smells of gunpowder and blood. In the alley behind the bank, Boom Boom, the gang's dynamite man, fumbles with short fuse, too short. The explosion rocks the street, blowing him apart in a rain of fire and grit. 3 remain. Inside the barber shop, Silas finds Little Roy, the teenage killer, crouched behind a counter, revolver shaking in his hand. Eyes wide, lips trembling. Silas studies him, gun leveled, then lowers it. You don't even have whiskers yet. Go home. Roy stares in disbelief, then runs, vanishing into the night. Main Street stands empty now, just 2 men left. Clay Blackstone waits in front of the saloon, framed by swinging doors and the broken sign above. Calm, calculating, gun drawn but lowered. You're alone, Blackstone says. You think that makes you strong. It just means you'll die unremembered. They circle each other like wolves. Words fall away. Fingers twitch. They draw. Silas takes a bullet to the ribs, gasping. But his shot is true. Blackstone staggers back, gut shot, and slumps against a whiskey barrel. Silas drops to his knees. The devil is dead, but so might be the sheriff. The first light of dawn creeps over Dry Creek, painting the blood-streaked town in pale gold. Smoke lingers like a ghost. Bullet holes riddle storefronts. The silence is thick, until Etta steps into view. She finds Silas slumped beside the saloon, barely breathing, hand still gripping his empty revolver. His shirt is soaked in blood, eyes fluttering open just long enough to recognize her. She presses her hand to his chest. "You stubborn bastard," she whispers. By midday, a few townsfolk return, shamefaced solemn, carrying white cloths. They say nothing. They just start helping. They lift Silas gently onto a wagon. As the wheels creak down Main Street, the town begins to move again. A montage follows. Graves being dug, crosses hammered into the earth, blood scrubbed from doorsteps, broken windows replaced. At the edge of town, little Roy, the boy Silas spared, mounts a horse. He looks back once, long and hard, before riding off toward a different life. Inside the sheriff's office, Etta writes to the governor. He stood for law even when the law stood alone. That night, as Silas sleeps beneath clean bandages, someone quietly pins his badge back to his chest. No ceremony, just a town beginning to remember. 10 years on, Dry Creek lives, no longer a ghost town, but growing frontier outposts with paved roads, new families, and an expanded schoolhouse where children laugh beneath the shade of cottonwoods. They call the place Gunfight Gulch now, and tourists arrive each summer to see the site where one man held off 10. Each July, during Founders Day, a local boy reenacts a final duel, squaring off with a wooden gun in front of the old saloon, just as Silas Reed once did. Parents applaud. Visitors snap photographs. Kids buy 10 stars from the general store. In the town square, a bronze statue stands tall. Silas Reed, rifle in one hand, a book in the other, gaze cast down Main Street as if watching over it still. Etta, now the town's mayor, oversees things with quiet pride. A traveling writer passes through, gathering recollections from old-timers. He finds a former outlaw, Little Roy, now a man in his 30s, placing flowers on a grave behind the church. Roy speaks to the stone. "You let me live. I learned from it." That afternoon, the church bell tolls again, for the first time in a decade, as a new sheriff is sworn in beneath Silas's portrait. It starts with a tune, soft at first, a dusty ballad played on a harmonica in a Las Cruces depot by an old man with a crooked hat and a faraway look. Then the words follow, drifting from saloons to schoolyards. 10 rode and slashed, but one stood tall slash. In Dry Creek where the righteous fall. The ballad of Silas Reed spreads like prairie fire. Children sing it during recess. Traveling musicians add verses of their own. Cowhands strum it by firelight. Across New Mexico territory, the tale grows in rhythm and reverence. At the heart of it isn't just a gunfight, but a man who refused to run. Silas becomes a symbol, not of bloodshed, but of resolve, of standing for something when no one else will. In saloons, old men argue. Was he brave or just suicidal? Didn't matter. He didn't blink. He stayed. Meanwhile, Dry Creek expands. New homesteads, a telegraph line, a school named after Clara Reed. The town thrives beneath his shadow. On a painted sign at the edge of town, it reads, "Welcome to Dry Creek, where one sheriff stood alone." Because as the song says, one sheriff. No backup. That's how legends begin. A modern-day historian's voice carries over faded photographs and flickering black and white film. Dry Creek's records show Sheriff Silas Reed never wore the badge again. He declined every offer, marshal, judge, territorial advisor. He lived the rest of his days quietly, teaching children how to read and tending the cemetery. Images scroll across the screen. Silas's original badge, dull but intact, encased in museum glass. A blood-stained shirt, tore at the ribs with the label, "Worn during the Battle of Dry Creek." A yellowed child's letter, framed and faded, its scrawl still legible. "Thank you for not running. Your town lives because you did." The screen cuts to 10 simple wooden grave markers, outside town, unnamed, weather-worn, each marked only with a number. History remembers one name and forgets the rest. As the camera pans over Dry Creek's modest skyline, the wind picks up dust. A final image appears, a bronze plaque on the sheriff's office wall, framed in shadow. Here stood a man. He did not run. The ballad's final lines drifting over a harmonica. He was just a man with calloused hands, who stood alone and made a stand. Fade to black.